So I'm pleased to introduce our keynote speaker, Kymberlee Price, this morning. Kymberlee is the co-founder and CEO of Zetech Security, a fractional product security consulting company whose mission is to make world-class cybersecurity expertise available to companies of all sizes. Kymberlee is a dynamic engineering leader, public speaker, known for developing high-performing multidisciplinary teams. She's a recognized expert in information security with extensive experience in product security incident response, bug bounties, secure development lifecycle, and open source security strategy. Ms. Price speaks regularly at conferences around the world, is on the content review board for Black Hat USA, where she's served the community since 2016. I'm really excited we were able to get her out to RVAsec this year. Please help me welcome my friend Kymberlee to the stage.
All right, good morning, Richmond. This is my first time here. It's lovely. Today we're going to talk about the dystopian future in front of all of us, but before that we'll talk about the present, and before that we're going to talk a little bit about the past. So the land we stand on today is not originally ours, and I think it's really important when we start any conference to recognize the people who were here before us, because it's through their sacrifices that we have what we have today. And so I'd like to take a moment and recognize that this land was originally occupied by the Powhatan and Monacan nations. And if you're ever interested in whose indigenous territory you're in, whether it's your home or a workplace, there is a link there for nativeland.ca, which has a number of maps that list that out. So the present. We can rinse and repeat vulnerabilities. Attackers use them all the time. But who needs a vulnerability when you can just phish the marketing intern or the CEO? Password stuffing attacks, easy peasy. Getting into companies all the time. You don't even have to have super elite O-Day to compromise companies. And we've been doing this for over 20 years. Microsoft announced SDL. They released their big secure development lifecycle 20 years ago. So when CISA announced Secure by Design last year, I'm like, where have I heard that before? Oh yeah, 20 years ago. And we still have vulnerabilities left and right. It's hard to feel good about what we're doing. And I have spent the last 2 years talking at conferences about how we're doing DevSecOps wrong. And what I realized is I was also wrong. It's worse than I thought, because DevSecOps is a privilege. Only big companies have DevSecOps programs. Small companies don't. Small companies don't have IT teams. Small companies don't have security teams. And so it's really hard to not want to just go off the grid and raise baby goats. But I'm not sure that raising baby goats will pay my mortgage, so I guess we're stuck with security still. So what is a small and medium business, or an SMB? And we'll talk in a minute about why that matters. But a small and medium business is under 1,000 employees and under $1 billion a year in annual revenue. And that sounds pretty small and inconsequential. I mean, maybe not the $1 billion a year in revenue, but there's companies that are, under 50 million a year in revenue. They're relatively small. And when you think about the marketplace and where vulnerabilities are happening and how people are being affected, you think Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, Google, banks, maybe hotels like MGM. You think big companies. You don't think of small and medium companies. But small and medium companies are really important to the industry, or to the economy. The economy is run in part by small and medium companies. And I may just say small from here on out, or SMB, but we're talking about the SMB category as a whole. And so 33.2 million small and medium companies in the United States. And also, my statistics are going to be from the US Chamber of Commerce, and so they are US-centric, but this applies internationally as well. There are small and medium companies all over the world driving local economies. 99.9% of companies in the United States are SMBs. You wouldn't think that the way the news talks about the economy, which is stock market driven. But the vast majority of companies in the US are SMBs. And almost half of all Americans work for an SMB. So if you think about what happens to a small company if they get hit by ransomware and people can't go to work, or if a company gets hit by ransomware and goes out of business, what happens to those employees? What happens to that local economy? What happens to those families and the community that they live in? But good feelings don't pay the bills. So let's talk about the money. Why do we have to care about SMBs? Well, they drive about almost half of the GDP. Almost 44% of the nation's economy is grown on the back of small and medium businesses. And they have $185 billion a year in tech spending. But their tech spending isn't on what we might think they should be buying. The former CISO of Levi Strauss, not an SMB, but the former CISO, his first question for every salesperson is, how's this gonna help me sell more jeans? And he's the CISO. It's always about generating revenue, no matter what company you're at. So it's time to start thinking about those security tools, the security tooling layer cake, I call it. And by the way, after the presentation, there will be cake. But you're an SMB. Look at this stack of tools. You don't have an IT team. You're gonna go research all of these? Figure out what it is you need? Some SMBs don't need all of these. Which ones do they need? Heck if they know. That's a lot of stuff to sort through and figure out what you need. And what vendor do you go to? And as somebody who's just walked the halls of RSA, I'm not proud. I had to walk the halls of RSA. It was not fun. And it's chaos. It's absolute chaos. And these companies don't care about SMBs because SMBs only want to buy 50, 100 seat licenses. But we haven't talked about the types of SMBs yet, because there's two different categories. There's a consumer of technology and there's a producer of technology. So on the consumer side, you might have orthodontists, accountants, plumbers, your local hairdresser, your local clothing boutique, mom and pop restaurants. And on the tech producer side, you have tech startups, IoT startups, clean energy startups. Those are the folks that are building technology. Different profiles and different tech needs. So your local clothing boutique probably doesn't need SAST and DAST tools because they're not doing product development, they're not developing code. But the tech startup definitely does. So these are a few of the SMBs in your neighborhood. And these are some of the tech startups. Did you realize Calendly is an SMB? They have under 1,000 employees. They have under $1 billion in revenue. Some of these companies you probably worked with. Some of them are even smaller. And then here are some little SMBs. Only one of them on that list probably has security staff, and that's because their husband is a CISO at a tech company. My accountant is on there. A shop I buy jewelry from is on there. I got coffee at Penny's Coffee in Buffalo last week. They all have point of sale systems. They all have newsletters for their customers. They all have point of sale systems. They all have to manage HR and their suppliers, and they need a whole suite of SaaS solutions, but they don't have an IT person to tell them how to configure those SaaS solutions most securely. Their job is selling a product or a service, not knowing everything there is about technology and how to secure it, and how to stitch all these different pieces together optimally. And they don't even know RSA exists. And if they did, no one would talk to them. As I said, there were 650 vendors. They're all looking for the big whale deals to close. And it's not organized in any way that makes sense. It's not like there's a hallway of SIEM solutions. They're scattered everywhere. You just wander around. It's less well organized than the Pike Street Market. Like, I know exactly where to go for different things there. No, it's just chaos. And so it's not helpful, and it's leaving them behind. But their purchasing is different as well, because they don't want to have an hour-long phone call with a sales rep to talk about the product and negotiate a custom contract. They don't have time for like side-by-side POC bake-offs. That's not their interest. They want to go to a centralized marketplace like an AWS or an Azure marketplace and just side-by-side comparison shop and pick things. It's frequently the CEO or the CFO, if the company has one, making the purchasing decisions in the particularly small companies. When you get closer to the 1,000 employee company size, about a third of the purchasing decisions are made by IT, but the rest are involving the CEO of the company getting involved in making a purchasing decision. They really like try before you buy. They want to sign up for something at a free tier or sign up for free for a month and see if it works for them before deploying completely. These aren't conducive with the enterprise sales model. And they don't always work very well for them. When they go to the internet and they're like, I need a password manager solution for my company. And every search result that comes up is the sales pitch. And they're trying to figure out which one would be best for me. There's no really great consumer reports of tools for them. And so they go to their other small and medium businesses. They go to their friends at their local chamber of commerce, and they ask each other what works for you. And that's how they make purchasing decisions. So let's say you're a small and medium business and you've decided, all right, we've got MFA. I've heard that's important. It was, something that we went ahead and deployed, but it's kind of a hassle. And we'd like to implement SSO. We're trying to do the right thing here. They're probably a tech-producing startup, not the orthodontist's office, but they're going to deploy SSO. And they use Zoom. And if they want to go from just having Zoom to having Zoom that supports SSO, there's a security tax because now you need the enterprise version of Zoom, and that's going to cost you more. It's going to cost you not as much more as the security tax on Slack, though. You want your team to have SSO for Slack? That's going to be 83% more than the base Slack price. This isn't the cost of the SSO provider. This is the cost the application charges you for the privilege of integrating with SSO. And a lot of small and medium companies don't use Confluence, they use Notion. They use G Suite. They use small, perceptively scrappier solutions than big enterprise solutions because they feel like it's going to meet their needs better. Notion also has a security tax to enable SSO. There is a website that talks about the SSO tax in specific and lists dozens and dozens more companies that charge up to like 400% more for the privilege of using SSO in their application. And SSO is, by all standards, a core security feature that improves the user experience of MFA, but it also improves the manageability of it when you have employees on board or off board. You don't have to go and shut a former employee out of multiple systems. You can simply turn off in one location and protect your environment. But the security industry and the technology industry is treating this like an upsell instead of a secure by design default feature. So let's talk about GitHub for a moment, because I talked about how Microsoft was on the forefront of security with SDL 20 years ago. GitHub was a Microsoft acquisition, and I love the security features of GitHub Advanced Security. They're amazing. Just right there in your CI/CD pipeline if you're doing development. But if you want SSO, you have to pay more to get that, even with GitHub. 425% more, because you have to go from $4 a month to $21 a month with GitHub Enterprise to have that. But GitHub Enterprise doesn't include advanced security. GitHub Enterprise has security features for public repos only. If you want to have the security features for your private repos, you have to pay $49 a month on top of the $21 for advanced security. You're now paying $70 per month for your developers who commit code to have the security features of the CI/CD pipeline. So to add advanced security to your GitHub Enterprise is 233% higher cost. But if you're just going from GitHub team and you're saying, no, we really need advanced security. My security consultant said advanced security is going to give me all the tools I need in the dev pipeline to secure my application. And yeah, I could go to 5 different companies to get a bunch of different solutions for all these things. I could pick up a secret scanner, a secret storage solution. I could pick up secret scanners. I could pick up SAAS and DAS tools. I could pick up software component analysis. I could have 5 or 6 different vendors for all of that. I could maintain all the different integrations, or I could have it all in one place with GitHub Advanced Security. That sounds amazing, except it's 1,600% more expensive to do that. And for a small and medium business, looking at the cost increase of those security features, that's eating into revenue, that's eating into profitability, that's eating into employee benefits. And it's just not happening sometimes. They're getting by with free versions of SonarQube that the security or the IT or the dev person at a tech startup has to go maintain. And it's a poor user experience for everyone. So what does security at an SMB actually look like? And I'm going to talk about the tech-producing SMBs first. Jake mentioned that I'm doing a consulting company that's doing fractional product security consulting for small and medium businesses. And we come in and we'll do the product architecture and design review, and we will look at their dev environment, and we'll look at their processes and their tooling pipeline, and we will advise them on their security gaps that put their customers at risk. And 9 times out of 10, the things that put their customers at risk aren't their lack of vuln management in the product and the fact that there's open source CVEs in the code base. It's that they don't have MFA. It's that every employee runs as admin. It's that there's no employee access control and there's no logging. So they have no idea if a developer in California is logging in from Russia at 2 in the morning and downloading 2 terabytes of data from the S3 bucket. And so that is the reality of SMB tech security. And these are tech companies that think they're going to IPO in the next 3 years. They have nothing in their security stack. Maybe they have a couple scanning tools in their dev pipeline to help them get that SOC 2 report to close customer deals. But I have seen companies that have turned off the notifications because it's too noisy. They think it's all false positives. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But they would never ship code again if they tried to deal with all the notifications. So there's security theater going on while they ship product to generate revenue. And that is the reality of these companies. So cake is a lie. They're not getting security. We can have that security layer cake and it can be great. And they're not doing it. It's too complicated. It's too expensive. These small companies who don't have IT staff. I've seen 100-person profitable, not just like we've taken VC money and we're generating revenue, but we're not yet profitable. I've seen profitable tech companies where the COO is their G Suite admin because they have no IT staff. There's no way they have the resources to go implement all the tools they need in the dev pipeline. Our reports generally come back with, you need staff and you need tools. But the tools alone aren't going to be enough for you. You need somebody who can implement them, somebody who can maintain them. Will AI solve this for us? Not until AI is reliable enough to not have to be double-checked by a human, because they don't have the humans to double-check that the AI is right. And so as long as AI is generating hallucinations, telling you it's a good idea to eat a rock every day for the mineral content, I mean, how can you possibly trust that the AI telling you a security risk is real? If your AI is unreliable 10% of the time, how do you trust it the other 90%? But here's what's interesting. Ransomware might be the security MVP we all didn't know we needed. And that feels really awful to say. But, you know, breaches, smeeches. I'll just give you another 2 years of identity protection and we'll all call it a day. If I'm publicly traded because I'm a big company, my stock price on average takes a 4% hit for 1 quarter. And the reason it takes the hit is simply because the incident response is very expensive. A big breach incident is very expensive, and outside consultants, internal, like bringing in meals for all the people who are working 16-hour days for 3 weeks. Anybody who's ever been in an incident knows how expensive they are. And so it hurts the stock price for a quarter, and then you're back to business. You don't even usually lose any customers. But ransomware is different. Ransomware affects your availability, and that affects your revenue. And so now companies are taking this very seriously. Companies that don't care so much about breaches care an awful lot about ransomware. And they're looking for solutions to protect themselves against that. And small and medium companies, they see the news about what's happening to MGM, United Healthcare, Colonial Pipeline. They know they're unprotected, but they also mistakenly think they're too small to be targeted. But ransomware operators don't care that you're small. And they don't care about how wealthy you are or what kind of work you do, because they'll also attack school districts, hospitals, and just last week, the Seattle Public Library. These are just community organizations. Some of them, hospitals, are providing a critical life-saving healthcare service. People can and have died because ransomware hit a hospital and affected the care of patients. And ransomware operators don't care. It's not personal, it's economic. And so that's changing the conversation around security, defenses, and protections for small and medium companies. And they're looking at what can I do to be sure I'm safe. Now, that assumes a certain level of sophistication on the part of the SMB, and unfortunately, I'm sorry to say, many of them just think that their SaaS providers have that all taken care of. We're good. That's why I use SaaS, is because they're doing the right security things. And they don't realize that without an MFA solution, anyone can get their password and then log into their SaaS and do bad things. So we have a lot of work to do still in making MFA and SSO more accessible to everyone. Small, large, you shouldn't have to need an IT team and a huge budget to run these tools. Because if we don't, this is our future. Software liability regulation. Now, there is a 2023 policy statement from the government that says We need to do this. We need to hold software vendors accountable for their software quality. And software vendors, of course, don't like this. They're spending a lot of money on lobbyists to fight against it. And honestly, when I started in security 20 years ago, and if you had asked me 10 years ago, I was against software liability as well. And I don't know that I am anymore, because we've turned security into a profit generator for companies where we're shaking down our clients for the security features for more protection money. And we can use the shared responsibility model to victim blame and say, they didn't buy the security features. They're responsible for the security of their data. That's not what secure by design or secure by default means. Secure by default doesn't mean you have to pay more money to get the security features. Secure by default means it is secure. When you open it up and you turn it on and you implement it, you have to go out of your way to turn off the security features. If you were going to ask me, do I think this is going to happen this year or next year? No. I don't think we're going to have software liability in the next year or two. It's probably going to take an act of Congress. And by probably, I mean it's definitely going to take an act of Congress to pass this legislation. And while the two houses do agree on cybersecurity being a priority, and both parties agree that cybersecurity is a priority, there's a lot of lobbying money that is saying, we can solve this other ways. Trust us, we're going to fix it. It'll be fine. But if you don't think for a moment that the next Colonial Pipeline or the next United Healthcare doesn't cause Congress to act or potentially overreact, or states and foreign governments will take action. They'll stop waiting for us. And we've seen this in privacy. We have a quilt of different privacy policies state by state because we don't have anything at the federal level. So now companies are having to comply with California versus Texas or whatever state privacy policy there is. And then there's, of course, GDPR. And so if we don't see a substantial change in the way software vendors deliver security features, not as a revenue generator, but as a part of the core product, we're going to see regulation come. And this would not be the first time for regulation, because the future is car seat belts. They were invented and patented by Volvo in the mid-1800s, but they didn't become a requirement in cars until the 1960s in the United States. And the government didn't say, you, car driver, click it or ticket, and you're like, where am I going to go get a seatbelt aftermarket and install it in my car? Which seatbelts work with my car? How do I install them? How do I maintain them? Am I even qualified to install them? Did I install it correctly? Is it doing what it's supposed to do? No, the regulation was on the car manufacturers. You have to include seatbelts by default. And did people use the seatbelts at first? No. It took a while to get there. But that's what's going to end up happening to software if we don't start making it secure by default. And we're seeing these sorts of regulations start to emerge in healthcare and in energy and critical infrastructure. And so it's just a matter of time until we see them in the consumer software space. So that is my big prediction. Might be a few years out. I'll come back if I'm wrong. I'll also come back if I'm right and say, I told you. But we're going to see either companies have to change what they're doing, or someone at the government level is going to make them change what they're doing. Because at the end of the day, our job in security is to enable customer trust and safety. We do that for our company, and our company generates revenue and profit off of their products. But I ask all of you to go back to wherever you work. If you're at a small and medium business and you're wanting to help do more in the security space and you're not sure where to start, hit me up on LinkedIn. Happy to have a conversation about, like, here are the top 3 things I would recommend, or the top 5 things that I would recommend for any SMB. But if you're at a big company, go home and talk to your leadership team about this area of, hey, maybe these features shouldn't cost so much. Do it in a way that doesn't get you in trouble, obviously, but start asking the hard questions about, are we really taking care of all the customers? Because SMBs that are the consumer space, the orthodontists, the electricians, the plumbers, they're just like your next door neighbor. They don't have an IT team. They probably don't even know their router has a password, so they definitely haven't changed it. And while they're a business, you have to treat them like a consumer. And so starting the conversation in your company about how do we start thinking more about these small and medium companies, whether they're the consumer type or the tech producer type, how do we shape our products and our offerings and the way people access our products to be more accessible to this market? And go back to those stats on how much money SMBs have to spend. And maybe, hey, not only do they have a lot of money to spend, they don't want to spend an hour on the phone with a sales rep. Like, it could be really, it's lower amounts of spend, but it's higher efficiency spend. We could make money on this because at the end of the day, that's what our companies all care about, is making money. So find ways to start this conversation around building out offerings to improve the safety of small and medium companies, because we're going to have to get there. So let's go make things better. Thanks.